Masal khair. Right now I want to teach you how to give people orders using the imperative, or what we call in Arabic fi'l al-amr. Now to build an imperative in formal Arabic, we use a slightly modified form of the majzoom case, that modified present tense verb conjugation. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you have a working knowledge of the majzoom case and how it works and what makes it special. If you need a refresher, feel free to take a moment to go back and watch the video on the majzoom case before continuing here. So we form an imperative in Arabic by taking the majzoom version of a present tense verb and lopping off any subject prefix that it has. So, for example, if I wanted to say to someone, speak Arabic, say, instead of English, I would take this verb for speaking, يتكلم. Suppose that I'm speaking to one grammatically masculine individual, addressing them. I suppose in that case it would be تتكلم. And because it's majzoom, it has a sukoon at the end. This is formal Arabic, fusha, that we're talking about here. Now what I would do is drop that subject prefix, and I would be left with تكلم. And that is how I would say to a grammatically masculine individual, speak. تكلم. تكلم العربية. If you look over here, you'll see a chart with all of the different verb forms. And we've done this same thing to them. We've set it up in majzoom, that's why they all have sukoon at the end, and we've dropped any subject prefix, and we wound up with our imperative. All of these imperatives, again, are for masculine singular. Now, if we were conjugating this verb for any other subject and went through the same process, we would wind up with a correctly conjugated imperative for any other subject. There are only 5 different subjects that we would need to worry about in Arabic if we're addressing someone or a group of someones in the second person. We would have enta and enti, masculine and feminine singular, entum and entunna, masculine and feminine plural, and entuma, the dual. You might not see the dual so much in speech, or hear it rather, but you would read it in certain contexts. For example, a novel, you might read an imperative given that way. So if we wanted instead to say, you, grammatically feminine individual, speak Arabic, we could go through the same process. تتكلمي, and here at the end we don't have the noon that we would expect on the marfu'a conjugation. We just have the ya, and then we drop the ta once again, and we wind up with تكلمي. You, grammatically feminine person. تكلمي العربية, for example. I have a handy chart of these suffixes that we might expect. Again, you can engineer it either way. You can work through the majzoom and drop the prefix, or you could just take this stem and add one of the suffixes. So all of you, everybody, تكلموا العربية. I've just added that y'all suffix for entum. I want to draw your attention to something over here, which is that in certain verb forms, 4 and 7 through 10, we've actually done something that might seem a bit strange. We've added back kind of a helping vowel at the beginning of the verb conjugations. This may seem a little bit strange and arbitrary until you remember that in formal Arabic, we aren't allowed to begin a word with a consonant that has a sukoon on it. And if we drop the prefix of any of those present tense verbs, then what we're going to wind up with is, as you can see, a letter with a sukoon on it. So if we wanted to say to someone, respect yourself, using the verb ihtarama. Well, if I wanted to conjugate it for enta in majzoom, masculine singular second person, I have tah. Oops, my pen isn't working so well. Tahtarim. But then if I drop this ta, I'm left with a ha that has a sukoon on it, and that can't be done, not in formal Arabic. So the solution is to just add an alif with a kasra at the beginning, and that allows me to maintain consistency and conform to the rules of Arabic. Notice that these four forms, 7 through 10, have a kasra, and form 4 has a fatha instead. So if I wanted to say to someone, send a letter using that verb, yursil, tursil, it doesn't matter what the conjugation is, I would drop that first prefix, and then I would have just a ra with a sukoon, which again isn't allowed, so I have to add that alif. Arsil al-risala, send the letter. I also want to bring your attention to this little asterisk up here on Form 1. Form 1 also obeys the same rule. We have to add a helping vowel at the beginning, but the vowel can take different forms depending on the verb. If we have a Form 1 verb conjugated in the present tense, the middle vowel might be any of the 3 vowels that we have in Arabic. It could be fatha or dhamma or kasra. And this vowel at the beginning is going to change depending on which one of those it is. If the middle vowel is a fatha or a kasra, we're going to maintain this kasra here at the beginning. But if the middle vowel is a dhamma, then we're going to add a dhamma at the beginning. That was a lot of words, so I'm going to share some examples. So if I want to say go to the party, or go to your room, or something like that, I would take tadhhab, for example, and then I have a fatha here, and with a fatha, I'm going to add an alif with a kasra, idhhab. Same thing if I have a verb whose middle vowel in Form 1 is a kasra. I'm going to replicate that kasra. So if I want to say, sit down, tajlis, that verb for sitting has a kasra here. So I'm going to have a kasra at the beginning as well. Ijlis, or ijlisi, ijlisu, sit down, all of you. But if I have a verb whose middle vowel in the present tense in Form 1 is a dhamma, like say tatbukh, that verb for cooking, I have a dhamma here, so I have to have a dhamma as my first vowel as well. Utbukh, hurry up and cook. And that is pretty much it. Now you know how to boss people around in Arabic.